Are you ready for the little tour? Okay, let's see. So there are the books. Now this is just one room, but you can see that I have the spines open and visible. And then if we want to talk about the movies that I do, um, let's go ahead and go in here. Turn on the lights. All of this is impromptu, but you can see the shelving that I put in there. Okay, goes all the way to the floor, one whole wall, and these are very carefully selected movies that I know I've watched many times. Not every movie. Many of them I've watched only once, but and some of those I keep because they're like negative examples of something. But the point is that I can see the titles, and sometimes 3 or 4 times a week, just because I'm passing the room and I'm a little bored, I'll go in there and I'll pull 5 or 6 movies off the shelf and I'll look through the titles just to remind myself what they are and why I have them and what I want to do with them and what I saw on them. And I will eliminate to make room for new because I don't want. That's information control. Part of information control is just being able to be okay with forgetting, to be okay with the ignorance of it. That there are going to be things that you are never going to know. They're books you're never going to read. They're movies you're never going to watch. So there is a sense of it's not about knowledge acquisition. It's about getting enough of the right type of knowledge so you can begin to feel it out and you get a sense of the abstracted idea behind that specific knowledge. And that idea is perennial and cross-categorical. In other words, that idea behind that knowledge will apply to many, many things that you haven't encountered yet. Okay? It has this predictive power. So, I took you into that room and you saw those videos. Now, this is only one room. If we go downstairs, you see my real library. I'm not fooling myself. This is not me trying to read more books than anyone else or to try to see all the movies that are out there. That is a fool's errand, okay? And if I take that seriously, then I am very far from being actual in control of the information, right? At that point, the information is controlling me. I will quickly overspend, overwatch, my relationships will suffer, my professional vision will suffer, and things eventually will crumble in my addiction to knowledge. Okay, so that's wrong. All right, what I need to begin doing is feeling all those texts and realizing as I work through all these texts, this was when in my 20s or 30s, I'm beginning to realize the great ones, the ones where the story was perfect, where the narration was where the writing was incredible, where the cinematography was out of this world, where the story was incredibly paced, where the casting and the pacing and the lighting were perfect. Because I am about learning what a good story is. Because if I learn story, I believe I learned the mind of God. I think God has created via the story structure. And that's really what I'm after when I try to go through all the stuff that I'm going through. And I feel like at one point there could be 100,000 incredible movies out there. Incredible movies, substance, relevant, truly speaking to the spiritual, psychological, social aspects that are important to us. Not the commercial big box stuff that is there to just give you a thrill ride for 2.5 hours and to help the movie business, make their millions. But the movies that are designed to impact you, make you feel, make you think, both at once. There could be 100,000 of those out there. I am never going to find them. But if I can find 1,000, right? If I can find 100, and if they belong in that category, and I learn those 100, and I begin using those 50, and I begin to sense the general contours of a spectacular movie, then I have learned that core idea that stands behind or underneath, that supports the 100,000 great movies or whatnot. And I don't have to watch them all to learn to find what I was looking for. Okay. So there's a sense there where it really is all about finding that very abstracted, essential, the essence of the thing behind all the individual things you're working with. It's like people. And I would highly recommend this, by the way. Okay, if you treat texts like people, I think you will get more out of them, and you will develop a sense of respect and understanding as far as how the interactions are happening. And you are very good at understanding how to interact with people. Many of us are just now, we might not think that, but we have developed habits and techniques to manage the people, how we interact with people. And I think if you do that with text, if you look at a text as a person, say, what type of person is this? What is this person trying to tell me? Why should I talk with this person? How do I connect with this person? Is this going to be a 5-minute meeting and never again sort of interaction, or is this going to be something? Is this going to be a friendship? And you're allowed to categorize the books just as you do people. You do not consider every person your best friend. You just don't. That no matter how much you tell people you do, you eventually find that the natural interactions themselves organically reveal who is your best friend, who is your close group. So, I guess what I'm saying is think of all the people in this world you are never going to know. But if you run into 10 genuinely kind and loving people who treat you right, who are humble and wise and just good people, right? You remember those 10 and you form a notion of what a good person in general is. And that notion is what is going to be powerful in you as you encounter more people as you live your life. That notion becomes effective without the content yet, because once through those 10 people, you get that notion and you use that to interpret many of the, future interactions you have. So, if you give me 10 great works of, literature, I begin to sense what a great work of literature looks like. And see, that's really what you want to get at. It's not about being able to say that you've read all, the great books, because that's not what it's about. Okay. It's about reading enough of the excellent to begin to understand what excellence is with a capital E, and then to bring that into your life. Because if the material, the ideas and the books and the content that you are interacting with, they'll do not somehow come back to make you a better person, right? To make you a more powerful agent for positive change in this world, right? And to make you deeper and more substantial, if you will, then it is for naught in a very real sense. One, well, I guess that's another discussion, but so part of not wasting your time here is once you begin to interact with text that we are all saying are good text, and then you're beginning to see it, you need to be able to really learn that contour, that outline. And as you continue listening to audiobooks, watching movies, reading books, and that insight happens, it could happen anywhere. It can happen in the shower. It can happen when you're mowing the lawn. It can happen when you're driving. How are you going to capture it? And once you capture it, how are you going to get those micro captures together into a group for later assessment? How am I going to get all those little sticky notes together so I can look at them in the weekend to see just what I was thinking, and then not all of those notes are going to go into the next stage, into the journal. How am I going to really find the core stuff? And how am I going to force myself to not take the easy route and just say, oh, well, here are all my sticky notes. I put them all on a piece of paper and I'm just filing the papers. Pretty soon I have boxes of these papers. Well, that's approaching, becoming a hoarder or something. I don't know what that is, but that's not the committed shifting through that you need to be doing. You need to take all those insights, whether they're voice notes or pieces of paper that you write them down, or sometimes you can have a dedicated couple of take 2 or 3 pieces of paper, fold them in half, and put them in a book, right? And then just have a pencil in there too, and then just write down thoughts that occur to you as you read the book, and don't worry about sentencing or spelling or anything. Just get them on the piece of paper, and then at the end of the month you got 3 or 4 sheets that you can look at. Maybe that's how you do it. I don't know. If you're creative, there could be a lot of techniques here, but it's a system of capturing them in the moment somehow quickly. That's going to look messy, but then down the line, whether it's 3 days later or in the weekend or 5 days later, whatever, reevaluating them, filtering them out one more time, combining some, eliminating others, so that you have those a few general principles that actually do make it into the long-term storage that are worth reviewing and thinking about and remembering. So there are all sorts of techniques that you can begin to develop, and I feel like that's really what our educational program is about. Okay, now that is one reason that on the surface sometimes the things we bring seem disconnected, because we are not really worried right now about any sort of linear movement through, say, a class called biology, or a class called psychology, or a class called world religions or something. We are much more interested in teaching you how to handle information and the ideas that spring from it, as opposed to learning the grammar of one specific topic. By grammar, I mean like the accepted facts and terms and notions. You will eventually learn that, just because the career path you choose will force you to do that. But you will find that knowledge is not as valuable as you think, because it is now democratically accessible from many, many areas. AI is going to beat you to the good answer every time. That doesn't mean you should never try to know it, but it should alert you to the fact that just simply knowing is no longer what education is about. It never was about that. But we did go through a period in American higher education for about 50 years, or maybe more, 80, where it seemed to be, I would say 50, it seemed to be really all about facts. And facts are only one step in the journey. Facts are just the raw material that you need to have at your fingertips to do the real thing, which is evaluating and knitting the facts together into a cohesive narrative, or eliminating, learning what to forget, learning what to never know, learning what to really double down with and memorize or remember, and then learning how to apply it, revise it, test it as you live life to see if it connects with life. All right, so thank you for watching. I know that these 2 videos were sort of a mess, frankly, but I think you can see my heart here, and the task that I'm sort of assigning you. That's how are you going to remember ideas you have when they come to you in the middle of a movie and you're watching the movie? What's the discipline going to be? Are you going to turn the movie off and write about it? Well, what happens if it happens 3 or 4 times? How maybe that is the strategy, but it seems a little awkward, especially if you're watching with others. So can you think of another strategy? How are you going to remember this? And how are you going to get those individual insights together and group them down the line for a more comprehensive analysis and evaluation? And then how are you eventually going to get those few principles that are really valuable? And how are you going to archive those or remember those? That's what we're after here. So please do think about techniques that work for you, where you are right now in your physical space and in your habits and in the way your mind is working right now. And try them, and don't give up. And remember that it kind of feels a little you know, sometimes when you don't have to worry about this, you might enjoy the moment better. But my challenge to you is, while we can still have times where that is really the case, if we are going to really try to figure out how to do lifelong learning, then there is a sense of discipline that is at play, present in many times throughout the regular day, where most people think learning isn't happening. You're learning how to recognize learning when it happens. And the question is, since it's happening in the smack middle of a regular day, how are you taking it down, if you will? How are you taking notes on it? If you want to just ask yourself that question. And I think that's a really good question. How are you taking notes on it? And you got to figure that one out. All right. Thank you for watching.